Before we start, here's a quick guide from Lord Garbelius. Please drop down in the description, give him your support, jump on his Patreon, check him out. Really good stuff. Thank you, Lord Garbelius. What's up, everybody? Soul here with another Sword of Convallaria video, and today we'll be talking about Pamina, the Fiery General. I'll give you a guide on her and how I like to use her, how she can benefit your gameplay. She's a pretty unique unit. She's got a lot in her kit. She's a ton of fun. I love her in every way. So let's talk about her trait. That trait is Unyielding Heroine. The character's defense is increased by 15% for each one enemy within 2 tiles of the character, up to 30%. And then she has Ignore Block and increases her physical defense by 10% and adds 20% physical defense to her physical attack. Upon entering her battle, she gets Unyielding Heroine, which can be triggered up to 1 time per round. Unyielding Heroine, when attacked by enemies within 2 tiles of the character, she deals 90% physical AoE damage to all enemies within range and generates 45% lifesteal. But for each additional target hit, damage dealt is reduced by 10% up to 30%. This effect cannot be dispelled or immunized. Of course, that's rank 1. Pretty great though. There's a lot to unpack there in that trait alone. At rank 2, that physical defense is still increased by 15%. And then right here we get that, it's increased to 15% from 10%, and then she adds that 20%, that stays the same, her physical defense to her physical attack, and then she gets that Unyielding Heroine triggered 2 times per round. At rank 3, her physical defense is bumped up again to 20% from 15. She still gets that adds 20% physical defense to her attack, and then Unyielding Heroine can be triggered up to 3 times per round. Pretty good there. And then at rank 4, we get that physical defense bumped up to 25% from 20, and then she's now adding 30% of her physical defense to her attack instead of 20. And then Unyielding Heroine is still being triggered only 3 times per round at rank 4. And then at rank 5, everything gets a healthy bump, and her physical defense goes up to 30% from 25. And then she's adding 30% of her physical defense to her physical attack, still just as in rank 4. And then she gains Unyielding Heroine, which can be triggered up to 4 times per round now. And then, of course, when triggered, she's dispelling 1 debuff from her opponent and recovering 1 energy, which is massive right there. So she highly benefits from being rank 5, more so than some characters in their rank 5s. If you're not interested in getting her all the way to rank 5, rank 3 is a healthy stopping point because you're getting those 3 attacks from her, 3 triggers from her Unyielding Heroine. However, this is a character that definitely wants to go rank 5 and should, if possible. If you like her and use her, then of course. Now let's talk about these ranks. At rank 1, you have on the left Breakthrough Spear, which gives you 2 choices: Break Endless Force and then Break Invincible. Break Endless Force is a skill that deals 50% AoE damage 3 times to all enemies within 1 tile of the target, gaining Shield Break 4, and before attacking, if the target is dying, she ignores 80% of their defense and inflicts no resolve before attacking. This is really, really good. And then of course you got Break Invincible down here, which is a skill that deals 110% AoE damage to all enemies within a 1/5 area in the target direction, and then knocks the first enemy back by 2 tiles. And so this is really, really good. Both of these abilities, they cost 2 energy and have no cooldown. This makes her a little bit energy hungry when she's running this. Regardless, these are 2 phenomenal damage dealing abilities. And then over here on the right, you have Who Dares to Contend. This is a support ability and inflicts Taunted on the target, and Pamina recovers 30% HP and gains parry and damage reduction 2 for 2 turns. It also grants physical defense up to 2 to all allies within 4 tiles of Pamina for 2 turns, and if the target is immune to Taunted, it inflicts Pamina's challenge instead. And so we got a couple things to read here. Taunted is interested in itself, and because it's control bound, but it increases your speed by 100. So that's the opponent. It increases their speed by 100. The target cannot be controlled and can only use basic attacks on the caster. And so you're making them faster, but they're also targeting Pamina and only targeting Pamina with basic attacks. Pretty interesting stuff. It's great that it's listed as a debuff and will be on your opponents as a debuff. Of course, you got parry, that's a state. Before receiving a physical melee attack, it turns to face the attacker and adds 20% to the character's physical attack to their physical defense. Really, really good there. And then damage, that going that way, that metric, your physical attack's like 3k, you're adding a healthy chunk of defense. Damage reduction, 2, we've seen that before in other characters, same as defense, up 2. And then Pamina's challenge, this is a debuff, and when attacked by the caster, damage taken is additionally increased by 30%. That's a lot of damage added there, so it's very, very good. These two abilities are great. If you're going damage dealing, you're going to want to take the Breakthrough Spear. If you're going defense, you're going to want to take Who Dares to Contend. I like both these abilities. This is where you're probably going to want to spend a Castalia on her. However, if you have to make a choice and you can't spend one, you've got to decide either defense or attack. Attack on the left, defense on the right. At rank 3, you've got Inertial Chop. We've seen this on other characters. Of course, this initiating an active attack deals 20% physical damage to all enemies within 1 tile radius of the character. This is a passive, really, really good. Extra passive damage. And then on the right is Indomitable Stance. This is a passive that decreases damage taken by 15%. When performing an AoE attack, which most of our attacks are, you're going to gain 50% of the character's magic defense, and physical defense is added to the character's physical attack. And then up here at rank 5, and that's what I suggest you get, by the way, is Indomitable Stance. At rank 5, you've got Front Defense as a reaction. When hit by an active attack from the front, the damage taken is decreased by 30%. This is very solid. As you know, she's going to turn and face her opponents with that parry, and so this is giving you some extra damage mitigation. The other on the left is Upright Spirit. This is a reaction. It increases your healing received by 15%. At the start of the turn, it dispels 3 debuffs from the character, and if the character has no debuffs, you recover 20% HP. This is what I ran with, and I've enjoyed it. I like it a lot. It has a 1 turn cooldown, and that's unfortunate. Regardless, this is a great ability, and I like it. If you decide to pick up Front Defense, there's nothing wrong with that. You're thinking consistent damage mitigation versus removing debuffs and healing. It's up to you. I took what was on the left, but taking what's on the right is definitely a healthy, rational choice. At rank 7, you have Shield Breaking Fierce Thrust. This physical damage deals 60% AoE damage to the first enemy in each column within a 3x2 area in the target direction, and inflicts physical defense 2 down for 2 turns and knocks them back 2. This is a great extra damage dealing ability if you want to pick it up. I did not. I went with what was on the right here, and this is Onslaught. No foe can stand. Physical attack jumps to the target location and deals 70% AoE damage to all enemies within 2 tiles of the target, inflicting taunted and vulnerable 2. After attacking, the character gains Onslaught for 2 turns. If the target is immune to taunted, it inflicts Pamina's challenge, the same as the skill we read below. We know what taunted does now. Vulnerable 2 increases that damage taken by 20%, but Onslaught reduces damage taken from reduces damage and piercing damage taken by 30%. Gains resolve and can block 1 fatal damage. This cannot be dispelled. This is a very powerful part of this ability right here. This ability does have a decent cost at 3, but a long cooldown of 4 turns, which we'll talk more about later. But however, I still think this is a great ability to run, especially if you're tanking, but even if you're doing damage, I like that ability a lot. Rank 9, you got your basic attacks. You got Surefire Attack, which is, we've seen this on other characters. It only lasts for 1 turn, so for me, it's just not it. I don't like it. I go with Powerful Attack on the right, dealing that extra 10% damage. It's up to you what you're looking for, but for me, that's what I chose. And then up here at rank 11, you got Frontline Action. This is a passive where your speed is increased by 50 flat, period, dot. And then when health, your damage taken is decreased by 20. This is a fantastic ability. I went with those on the left over here, which is Counterattack Slash. And of course that gives you these two abilities, counterattack and counterattack slash for 2 turns. And of course counterattacks when you're taking an active attack from an enemy from the front or side. You perform a strike back 70% once per round, but the counterattack slash is a buff. And when you're using strike back or triggering the trait, which she definitely has strike back in her trait, damage is increased by 85% and she generates 50% lifesteal. When using strike back, the maximum range is increased by 8 tiles. The minimum range is increased by 2 tiles. And the strike back count is increased by an additional 2 times per round. This can be pretty phenomenal as a 4-turn cooldown and a 3 energy cost, which is a little steep. However, it's a decent ability. There's nothing wrong with taking frontline action instead. I might even have suggested it. These both are very useful abilities, but neither are abilities that I would necessarily run all the time. It just depends on what you're looking for. Her starting ability is this rapid combo. We've seen this in other characters. This is a single target attack that deals 20% damage and dispels 2 buffs. And then of course has that pursuit that deals an additional 130% damage. Pretty decent ability there. Now, there's 2 ways to play her in my mind. And one of which is as a damage dealer out and out. And the other is as a tank, more or less taunting the opponents. I think her running as a damage dealer is fine. She does a decent job, but I don't think this is what she's meant to do, and I don't think it's her niche. However, let's talk about it. I don't have her signature weapon, which probably is her best in slot as a damage dealer. However, I'm running double-sided halberd on her because most of her attacks are AoE attacks. This does a fantastic job because it increases damage done by the amount of enemies hit. And then I run that crystal burst armor on her, which increases her HP, and the strike back deals 10% more damage. And nobody doesn't like that, and she's definitely doing strike back, so this makes perfect sense. I love the sword and wand resonance because that each tile traversed, you're getting that 4% buff up to 12% in her damage. And then for me, I like to run Course of Fortune on her. There's nothing wrong if you want to run Dream of the Magician, but Course of Fortune is what I run. It's got, especially with the hidden effect, getting the additional buff. You're getting energy back, and you're doing it pretty often. And so I love this on her because she is energy hungry with this breakthrough spear ability. Now, with that said, I have to talk about these abilities. Of course, you have her basic attack and her reaction, but breakthrough spear is what I'd suggest running on her as a damage dealer. Indomitable stance. And then, of course, keeping that onslaught no foe can stand because of everything it gives her with that resolve and invulnerable to and taunting. It just does so much. And mobility, you just have to keep this on her. As I said, with that Terror Whisper, I know I'm kind of jumping all over the place. If you don't like Course of Fortune, run that Dream Magician. You're going to do extra damage per enemy hit, especially with that hidden effect unlocked. However, I found myself enjoying Course of Fortune more. Now, my preferred way of playing her, and the way I think she is meant to be played and does the most for you, is as a tank, taunting your opponents and lure them to you. You might not have the most utility in all situations and fights, especially if you're doing a single target fight with against one big boss. However, if you're on the field and you're doing a fight with a lot of different enemies, she definitely has a place here. And these abilities you want to run on that, of course, is your normal basic attack, your normal reaction. You're going to run Who Dares to Contend on this, and of course that gives that taunt. It's single target with a long cooldown of 3 regardless. That's a fantastic option here. It's going to give her that parry, the damage reduction, and the defense 2 to all allies. Indomitable Stance is what we're running as a passive there for her, and then that onslaught no foe can stand. That just stays on her no matter what. It just has so much utility and versatility. Just can't drop it, and it definitely belongs on her tank build. Now, where you see the most change in her build when jumping the tank is her weapons. I don't think her signature weapon is best in slot for her tanking. That could be argued. Regardless, I liked the Silent Guard a lot. When actively attacked, her defense is increased by 30%, and the next attack deals 25% more damage. I absolutely love this on her. Did a fantastic job, and it's enjoyable. For the trinket, we run Cooling Powder. And of course that increases your healing received by 60%, and you gain an immunity to no healing received. For the resonance, we're running that wand and pinnacle to decrease the physical damage taken. And then with that Terror Whisper, we are running Guidance of the World with the hidden effect unlocked, because we're not only getting an energy back for standing by, we're also dropping cooldowns for standing by. And on this tank build, if you look, her cooldowns are high. She's got a 3-turn cooldown here, and then a 4-turn cooldown here. So basically turn 2, she's waiting 2 turns for her next ability to be available. And so that reducing cooldowns is a big deal, in my opinion. Now, it could be argued that you could trade out Guidance of the World for another tarot, whatever it is that you're after, whether it is Course of Fortune or Hermit to drop mid damage, and then maybe you want to change your resonance up a little bit and try to go for this Wand and Cup where you're getting that engraving resonance. If it's a 50% chance to proc, it's going to refund the energy consumed and reset your cooldown. This is very good and has a lot of potential. It has a 4-turn cooldown, but you're waiting 4 turns anyways. It could be argued this is the way to go. I did mess with this and try it a little bit. I found that it definitely had its uses and it wasn't bad. However, I preferred to run it this way. I prefer to take the extra physical damage taken reduced by 15%, and I didn't mind standing by. There's many a turn where I'd be auto attacking. I'll sacrifice an auto attack per turn just to stand by and get those cooldowns energy back. Doesn't bother me one bit. And so that's why I went with it. She's not lifestealing on those auto attacks. She's not getting anything extra. And it's honestly, a lot of times, not a huge difference maker with those auto attacks. So this is my preferred way to play right here. Let me show you it in action to see if you like it. So right here we got Tower 9-3. Our enemies are nice and bunched up. We take Layla and we teleport over to proc the barrel, get some fire on the field. Coco goes over with her Iron Pot Stew, buffing her and Sophia. He comes over and wants to hit Pamina. That's fine, we're not bothered by that. Here comes that peak animation. Pamina comes into the field. Boom. Breaks the health pylon. Debuffing all of our opponents. Just stand in the middle of everything, ready to take it all. Spy comes over and drops that. Gets that agent out. Dealing a little bit of damage. Getting some shred. Getting rid of his shield. We got Momo. She comes over and sets up her alert. Momo and Layla are a ton of fun to play with Pamina. She taunts and brings the enemies over, and they set up their alerts, and the enemies just walk into their own deaths while trying to get this to Pamina. It's a ton of fun. I've really enjoyed running it. As you can see, Pamina is fairly low. She's taking quite a few hits, but she's not shaken. Look at that, 254 damage right there. She seems so hardy. She just is not fussed by damage. She's not worried. She shrugs most of it off. It's so good. Comes this guy, comes over and targets the agent and kills him. And taunt the knight, and we stand our ground otherwise. Parries, counters, kills 2, gets a 3rd with the Scorch. Fantastic stuff. Or an infection, not Scorch. And cooldowns weren't a huge issue in this fight because the fight got wrapped up so quickly. These opponents are trying to act within these alert ranges and getting punished for it. But that's what Pamina does in a nutshell. She's able to walk into a situation where there's a lot of opponents and all grouped up potentially. She can just jump right into them without too much fear, regret, or remorse and do big damage and make them regret living or being on the battlefield in general. Super duper great. And like that, the battle is pretty much over. So yeah, that's my preferred way to play as Pamina. Absolutely love her. As I shown in the video, I love having alert units in and around her with their alerts up, obviously, and then she's taunting the opponents, forcing them onto her, dealing damage to them for hitting her, and then on top of that, they're taking damage just for trying to get to her and to hit her. It's so fun. It's absolutely great. Pamina is phenomenal. I can't say enough about her hardiness. She's able to jump into those opponents, to stand her ground, to take the hits. We're talking about Tower of Conquest, which isn't necessarily anything crazy anymore, but still, to only be hit for like 254 and only 1,000 here and there, it says a lot. It's not a lot of damage to take. Most characters tend to be a little bit squishy and get hit a little bit harder. She does a great job taking those hits and shrugging them off like it's nothing. She's a phenomenal unit with a phenomenal way of playing that really shakes the game up and is a ton of fun. With that all said, thank you so much to my Patreon members for allowing me to make the content, to make the pools, to get the characters, to create the guides that benefits everyone on the channel. Thank you so much for all your support. If you're interested in joining our Patreon, make sure you hit the link down below. And then if you're interested in joining our Discord and you'd like to be a part of our community where we talk about all things Sword of Convallaria and then some, make sure you hit that link down below and join us. And yeah, thank you so much for making it this far. Please drop me a like and a subscribe, as it does a lot for me. And I wish you all the best and good luck in your Sword of Convallaria adventures. Until next time, I'll catch you later. Bye.